router, because of here load balancing method is weighted, and we can change the weighted value in R1 is 50 and R2 router is 100. So here 3 PCs are there, so one PC can communicate to ISP through R1 router and remaining 2 PC can communicate to ISP through R2 router, because here the weighted value is 50 and here is 100, so is 2 times, so 1:2. Okay, we can check the ARP, check the virtual MAC address, show ARP. Here we can see the virtual MAC address of R2 router. In PC1 the virtual MAC address of R1 router, show ARP, and PC3 show ARP, so the virtual MAC address of R2 router. So in previously the PC1 and PC3 can communicate to R1 because of ARP cache, so the ARP history by default is stored in the PC 5 minutes, so that's why only I will just shut down that interface and again I will enable that interface, so the ARP history can be cleared. So depends upon the load balancing method, it will be working fine. Okay, so in case, so R1 router is an active virtual gateway and active virtual forwarder, and R2 router is an active virtual forwarder. So the duty of active virtual forwarder is just to forwards the traffic, and the duty of active virtual gateway is only response to the ARP request. So once we can assign the virtual IP, means the R1 router and R2 router, each router have unique virtual MAC address can be generated. So through the allow packets it can learn that virtual MAC address. So once the R1 router can goes down, the R2 router takes the responsible, and PC1, PC2 and PC3 can communicate to ISP. So here the R1 virtual MAC address is, so R1 virtual MAC address is 0007.b401.f401. So once this R1 router fast Ethernet 0/0 link goes down, means the both virtual MAC address, that is virtual MAC address of R1 and virtual MAC address of R2, both virtual MAC address can take responsible for R2 router. So PC1, PC2 and PC3 can communicate to ISP through R2 router, but it can sense the virtual MAC address, that is R1 virtual MAC address can send to PC1, and PC2 sends its own virtual MAC address, and PC3 it sends its own virtual MAC address. Even though the router is failed, the link is down, but its own virtual MAC address can be sent to PC1 to communicate to ISP. We can check. So just go to the R1 router and interface fast Ethernet. So before that I will show it to you. Show GLBP brief. So here the virtual MAC address F401 is active, that is the current router, that is R1 own virtual MAC address is local. Okay, next one 007B401. So this is an R2 virtual MAC address, is an state is in listen, that is 172.30.200.2, that is R2 own virtual MAC address. Okay, so here just go to that particular interface and give shutdown. Now this R1 router can goes down. We can go to the R2 router and check it. So now this router becomes the active state because AVG is down. So now R2 router is active state and AVF. It can act as an active virtual gateway and active virtual forwarder. Now here we can see show GLBP brief. Here we can see 007B401 F401 is an R1 virtual MAC address, but here the state is active, that is now this two virtual MAC address can be responsible for R2 router only because of R1 router is down. Once the R1 router comes up, means it can responsible for its own virtual MAC address, and 007.B401 F402 is own virtual MAC address for R2 router. So once we have enabled preemption in R1 router and R2 router, means so here the priority value is R1 router priority value is highest value is an 200. So this router is an active virtual gateway and this router is an active virtual forwarder, and R1 router can act as an both active virtual gateway and active virtual forwarder. So now the fast Ethernet 0/0 link can goes down. So now the R2 router, that is active virtual router, and automatically goes to active virtual gateway state. Now this router is responsible for active virtual gateway and active virtual forwarder. It's an active state. So once this router fast ethernet 0/0 link can comes up, means it automatically goes to active state because of the priority value is highest. If you are enabling preemption in R1 router and R2 router, means it automatically goes to the active